We kick things off with our hero telling us that he has been reincarnated in a world where women rule everything. They seem to be the ones who fight for their country and their people all the time, and their prizes for bravery happen to be men. As a matter of fact, there is only one man for 9 women if we were to look at the population of this world, which means that men are supposed to be kept hidden from the public world and only be used for private affairs. The women of this world will do everything in their power to get as many men as possible for themselves. If they are not able to get any men for themselves, then they will simply share them with their sisters and neighbors. It turns out that a man's body holds a lot more value in this world than a woman's, which is why they are kept as prizes to be cherished by their owners. And they are also sold off as slaves to other women who are willing to pay high prices for them. That's when we see our own hero in chains, and he comments on how terrible and cruel this world is. However, he is known to be a complete deviant because he totally loves cute girls and their curvy bodies. We are now taken to the present day where he is being taken somewhere, and he comments on how it's been 2 years since he's come to this world. However, no matter how many times this is done to him, he will never be able to get used to meeting the queen of this world. We can see that he is quite nervous as he is brought in front of the queen, and he says that the main reason for him having to go through this is the little girl who is there with him. She is the second princess of the land, and her name is Valerie. She has made our hero her primary advisor, and his name is revealed to be Faust. Valerie asks Faust if he is thinking of something, but the main issue is that he's trying his level best not to think of anything at all. If he raises his head and speaks to the queen, that is when the real test begins, and then we see Her Majesty asking him if he has an opinion he would like to share. He knows that he does not have any kind of advice to share, as he is only here hoping to carry forward the will of his mother and all his ancestors who came to this land before him. We learn that the queen's name is Lysa, and she is an extremely attractive and curvy babe. She is calm and dignified, just like a model queen should be, and she is 32 years old with 2 daughters. Of course, because she is so attractive, it pains our hero to look at her, because it causes his elephant to stand each and every time. However, he must make sure not to make a fool of himself in front of the queen, so he has to pull it together. He knows that if he messes it up in front of Lysa and her audience, then he will get punished for sure. Valerie can sense that something is up with Faust, so she asks him if he is okay. Lysa says that it seems Faust has an issue with something, and he tells us that the issue is actually the queen's outfit, which is tempting him a lot. Lysa tells him that there is no need to hold back, as he can speak his mind freely in front of her. Before he can say anything else, Faust tells us that it is a sin in this world to get excited upon seeing a pretty girl. You would be considered to be a creep if your elephant misbehaves, and if the people of this world were to find out that Faust was getting a full mast just from seeing Lysa, then he would be ridiculed and seen as a shady man, along with his family members and ancestors who have previously been reincarnated here. As a matter of fact, in order to preserve his own modesty, Faust is wearing a metal belt to keep his elephant hidden from the queen. Such a rigid condition is way too much for our hero, who was an innocent man back in his original world. Now Lysa says that Valerie is preparing for her first ever battle, but she only has command over her own royal guards and the queen's troops. Of course, she does not feel the need to use so much force against a bunch of basic bandits, but Faust is not at all paying attention to what Lysa is saying. He is trying his best to keep his elephant at bay, but then there is also the point that Valerie should not be fighting bandits in the first place. Faust's elephant starts to hurt as it fights against his metal belt with all its might. Valerie seems to notice this, and it makes for an awkward scene, but she does her best not to react. Lysa keeps adjusting her position, and this makes things very hard for Faust, because he does not want to see the queen swinging everything around without a care in the world. He once again reminds himself that he can't afford to sully the name of his late mother over here. But there is only so much an untouched man can do when he is in front of such a curvy babe. At this point, the battle between his elephant and the metal belt is so intense that one of them is definitely going to break by the end of the fight. He has to act fast before things get out of hand. So he looks around for some kind of support, but only notices Valerie. With no other option, Faust decides to hide behind the second princess in order to conceal the massive battle between his elephant and the metal belt. Now Faust wonders why Valerie is being sent to battle basic bandits, especially when her elder sister, the first princess Anastasia, had to fend off an invasion from the enemy forces of Willendorf for her first battle. This could even turn Valerie into the laughing stock of the court. He then tells the queen to please reconsider this battle for Valerie, and he is also relieved that he can keep his eyes off Lysen while hiding behind the second princess. This will give him a few seconds to recover from the battle his elephant is fighting. Valerie tells Faust that she is fine with fighting bandits, as she is used to such treatment already. Lysen has had enough of this, so she tells Faust that fighting bandits is also an important duty of the people of this land. It is no less than any other noble duty, so he should raise his head and speak to her properly. Of course, she does not know that the reason Faust is not raising his head is completely different. Our hero knows that if he gets another peek at Lysen's assets, then he will be done for without a doubt. He bows down to her. But this is once again only so that he can avoid looking her in the eyes or other body parts. The queen tells him to heed her words, as she believes that defeating bandits is also a worthy service. She then asks Faust if he believes that defeating bandits is a task that he considers to be beneath him and Valerie. Our hero finally gets another look at Lysen's curvy body, so his nose starts to bleed and his elephant starts gaining the upper hand against the metal belt. Faust believes that he is going to lose the war against his intrusive thoughts, and he's ready to risk it all against the queen. He begins grinding his teeth, and even though this is meant to control his excitement, the queen and her guards believe that he is actually getting angry and wants to attack her. The guards prepare for battle, and Lysen tells Faust to keep his feelings in check. However, this is not to warn him, but rather to tell him that she is not trying to belittle his advice and expertise. Lysen says that Faust is the Knight of Wrath, and she truly values his skills as a fighter. After all, he was the one who rode out to war with the first Princess Anastasia when she was selected to fight her first battle. In fact, Faust was the one who was able to tip the scales of the fight against Willendorf, and the entrance of him and his soldiers proved to be the defining moment that turned the tables for Anastasia. Not only did Faust manage to slay 10 barbarian knights all by himself, he was also able to defeat the head of the opposition force, and he took his head by force. Keeping that in mind, Lysen says that it is not at all her intention to make a fool out of the great hero of the war. She will never forget the services that Faust has rendered to her country and kingdom, and she also understands how much Faust cares for Valerie. Strangely enough, hearing this calms down our hero's elephant, and he becomes a bit serious. Lysen then tells him that he needs to listen to her carefully, as the royal decree has already been made. This means that the queen can't really change her mind, even if she wanted to. Faust figures that there is nothing more for him to say over here, so he asks the queen if he can take her leave. The queen realizes that our hero has calmed down, so she allows him to go. Faust is thankful that both he and his elephant were able to make it through today's tough battle, so he decides to exit the room while he is still in the clear. Before he goes out, Valerie looks at him with innocent eyes and says that she is truly thankful to have had such an amazing man as her advisor. Faust looks at her like a hero, but actually tells us that he is just glad that Valerie has not inherited her mom's curvy body. After he leaves, we learn that it was due to Faust being so brave and defiant against the queen that Valerie was allowed to take as much as she wanted from the national treasury to help her with her battle. Although this seemed to be the main agenda for Lysen at the time, it looks like there is something else on her mind, and it has to do with our hero. Ever since she laid eyes on Faust this session, her own intrusive thoughts had started to creep in. She believes that she had made a mistake when she first appointed Faust as an advisor to Valerie before the war. She thought that he did not have any feelings at all, and was just a cold, calm person. But today, she saw a different kind of fire in his eyes, and it startled her for a bit. She does not know whether our hero was putting on an act in front of her, or whether he was being genuine, but the very fact that he was willing to stand against the queen of this kingdom was extremely daring, especially because he did it all for Valerie's honor. She knows that Faust must have felt insulted at first, because he was the great hero of the war who saved everyone's lives. After all, dealing with a male knight who is better than everyone else in this kingdom is a bit of a task. Since Faust is the Knight of Wrath who can get triggered so easily by his emotions, Lysen knows that he is not a man she can take lightly at all. Also, when she said that her intentions were not to belittle him, she actually meant it. The truth of the matter is that she genuinely wants Valerie to have her first battle against the bandits, and there is a good reason for it as well. Basically, the queen wants the first princess Anastasia to succeed her as the queen of this kingdom smoothly. This means that it would be a waste to try and build any kind of base for Valerie, as she is the second princess. Lysen issued the royal decree only because it would have been a waste of the throne's resources to use them on someone who would not even become queen in the near future. However, when Lysen saw the enraged face of Faust, which he was trying to keep hidden from her, she also noticed that he gave a warm and gentle smile to Valerie. This reminded her of how her own late husband would smile at her back when he was alive. Lysen realized at that time that Faust's anger was only an outward show, and he was a lot more mature than she had thought he was. This implies that Lysen should have handed Faust over to Anastasia, rather than Valerie, as he would have been the perfect advisor to the queen. Basically, Faust treated a powerless princess as an equal, and showed her the kind of care and concern that Lysen has been longing for as well. The queen can't resist being attracted to the heart of a man like Faust, and this is where her intrusive thoughts take over again. Faust is not just a man who loves his people, he is also a man who is loved by his people, just like the late king. Lysen also feels that taste in men is something that her daughters have picked up from her. We now learn that it is a bit dangerous for Faust to be with Valerie, especially after Anastasia saw his bravery and skills during the war. She has already become obsessed with our hero, and wants to lay her hands all over him. The problem that Lysen sees here is that Anastasia might try to interfere with Valerie in order to take Faust away from her, and this will be a huge problem. If there is a struggle that will break out between both the sisters, then there will be a massive issue for Valerie, as her supporters are not as strong as proper as Anastasia's legion of veteran supporters. There's also the fact that the first princess has Duchess Astarte as her advisor, who is third in line for the throne. Astarte had fought with Faust during the Great War, so even she knows what he is capable of. Valerie has always been a nice and kind girl, but she was always shunned by these two women right from when she was a child. Lysen worries that the worst may befall her youngest daughter if the other two were not to show her any mercy. Since she was always in the shadows of Anastasia and Astarte, Valerie was pretty much all alone by herself, and she chose her own advisor despite being terrified. She ended up choosing the best possible man for the job, but Lysen knows that she will have to pull them apart before their bond grows any deeper. After all, this is only for Valerie's good, because Lysen wants her kids to be at peace with each other. The queen wants to make sure that Anastasia's jealousy is taken care of, so she decides to issue an order to Valerie. She says that if the second princess is to fail in her duty to defeat the bandits, then Faust will be removed as her advisor, and then placed under the command of Anastasia. Of course, Lysen knows that there is no way that Valerie will lose if Faust is by her side, but this does come as a massive shock to the second princess. Valerie steps out of the room, but she looks extremely sad and asks herself why such things only happen to her. She has been treated as a spare by her own elder sister, and now even her advisor has been put under the risk of being taken away from her. Valerie states that it must be because she is a mediocre person, so such an order should have been expected. But even then, she was the one who found Faust in the first place. In order to understand this, we are taken to a flashback from 2 years ago, where we see Valerie telling our hero that he is going to become her advisor. Our hero was shown to have a massive appetite as he was eating enough food to fill a whole table. He then looked at Valerie with a smug grin, so she asked him why he was showing her that kind of attitude. After all, an advisor should not have been acting that way. But Faust said that he had no idea what Valerie was trying to say to him. Also, he wanted to know what would be in it for him if he were to say yes to the second princess. Valerie thought for a bit, and then it struck her that Faust had been trying to meet her mom for a while. She promised to get him the meeting within the first week itself if he agreed to be her advisor. Faust was cheered on by this, as it would have been very helpful to him at the time. Valerie also mentioned that she had a lot of money, so that wouldn't be a problem for him either. Of course, extra cash was never going to be a problem for our hero, so he decided to let the second princess continue with her offer. Valerie got a bit nervous then, but after some more thought, she decided to offer him the choice of being placed wherever he wanted to be stationed. Now, this would have been more than enough for any normal man to have said yes. But our hero was a smart man, so he asked her if there was anything else she would like to offer. He then asked Valerie why she called out to him in specific, because he's a huge guy, and did not particularly find himself to be attractive. Valerie asked him how many heads he had taken till then, but he could not keep account of them as he had taken so many. What he could say for sure was that he had at least taken down 100 of them, so that was more than enough to make Valerie happy. She was also certain that if Faust took part in the sword tournament of the kingdom, then he would have easily placed as the strongest fighter. Faust simply told her that she would have to stick to the word if, as men were not allowed to join such a tournament. This gave Valerie some leverage, so she offered her hand and told Faust that the both of them should unite as people who would never get to become number one. With that, our hero agreed to the second princess's terms, and became her advisor officially by taking her hand and kissing it. Since this was the day he swore himself to her, Valerie tells us that even if she loses everything else, she will most definitely not give up Faust at all. Now, we move back to our hero, who is not at all happy with the way things have gone for him so far in this world. He thought that by becoming the advisor to Valerie, he would be able to go back to guarding the borders of his land. But things have turned out quite differently for him. He got wrapped up in a huge invasion, and even a whole war, and now he has to help the second princess with some bandits as well. It doesn't help that he needs to see the queen on a regular basis, especially with the kind of clothes she wears, as his elephant needs to wage war with his metal belt all the time when he's in front of her. Anyway, the main focus for him now is that he has been assigned as a babysitter to the second princess for her battle against the bandits. Basically, becoming an advisor has been nothing but a pain to him. We then shift to our hero working at one of the gardens in the royal palace, and a couple of girls are sitting there, commenting on his appearance. One of them says that even though Faust is supposed to be a man, he is a shameless person because of all his muscles. The other one says that he is nothing more than a repulsive sight, which doesn't seem to make any sense. They can see that he is tending to the flowers, so they wonder if he is trying to show that he still has some kind of manliness left in him. Of course, Faust does not care about the flowers, but he notes how men like him are not really looked at as prizes in this world. It's rather shocking, but small and petite men are seen as attractive over here, and big bulky men like Faust are considered to be ugly. Nothing in the royal palace seems to make any sense to our hero, because one moment, he is being given a treat to the eyes by the queen, and the other moment, he is being insulted by jobless women. All of this is a huge pain to him, but he has to deal with it. At this point, all that Faust wants to do is hurry up and go back to his main land, which is the Polydoro domain. Here he can find a suitable wife and live the rest of his life happily. However, one of the girls says that Faust must have been some abandoned barbarian that his mother must have picked up. She also calls Faust's mom a weirdo. And this is all it takes to tick him off. He decides to tell us a bit about his mom, who was the last ruler of the Polydoro domain, and also an odd person. Faust had lost his dad not too long after he was born, and his relatives were constantly telling his mom to get married again and have a girl child so that she could become the heir to this land. However, she loved Faust's dad way too much to do such a thing, and even though Faust was a boy, she made sure to teach him all the things that would normally be taught to a girl while growing up. Funnily enough, these are all the things that would be taught to a boy in a normal situation. Our hero had the memories of his past life, so he simply assumed that this was the way of the world over here, and he played along with it. He did his best to fit into this new world, and also please his new mom, who barely used to speak. He would often stay up studying each and every night, and also do battle training, which was super tough for him. Even though this was a world with an odd gender ratio between men and women, it still came as a surprise to Faust that the idea of a male knight was never even heard of. When he was 15 years old, he had asked his head squire Helga about this, and she could not even look him in the eye, as it was such a ridiculous concept to this world. As time would pass by, Faust's mom's body would begin to weaken, and it made things worse for her and her son. When she realized that she did not have much left to offer Faust, she still did not give up and would force herself out of bed to make sure that he would learn the ways of survival in this world. It was when our hero finally turned 20 that his mom was finally out of things left to teach him, which led her condition to become a whole lot worse. She eventually passed away at the young age of 35, and it was only after she was gone that Faust could realize who she truly was. A strange woman who had refused to remarry and give birth to another child was quite rare for this world, and she even went on to teach her son the ways of how to become a knight and her successor. She was a mom who gave up everything else to make sure that her own son would go on to live a nice, comfy life. This is exactly the kind of mother who is respected and loved in Faust's original world as well. Obviously, hearing someone else talking smack about his own mom has made him upset, which is why he approaches these women with rage and gives them a piece of his mind. Naturally, he does not have a problem with them if they call him and his body ugly. However, to insult his mom, and even the people of Polydoro, whom she had loved and protected with all her might, is something that our hero can't forgive. He proceeds to attack one of the girls by pushing his finger against her nose, which is good enough to cause it to bleed. The girl begins to panic, and the other one says that Faust should get out of this area right now, as he is nothing more than a barbarian to them. She adds that she and the other girl are relations of the advisor to the first princess, which means Duchess Astarte. They add that they will let Faust walk away if he stops hurting the other girl this minute. He does not care about any of this, and he tells the threatening girl that she is next in line to get attacked. He even grabs her because he does not wish to chase her around. He continues to press against the other woman's nose, and she begs for forgiveness, after which she says sorry as well. This does not move our hero, as he thinks the women of this world are nothing but sad excuses for the men from his own world. He eventually leaves them alone, and then we hear someone entering the scene. She is not shown to be very happy, and she asks what's going on over here. She is totally enraged as she sees Faust taking his finger out of the girl's nose. And then we learn that it is none other than the Duchess Astarte herself. Faust figures it's her, so he asks how she's doing today in a sarcastic tone. However, she says that she is in the worst possible mood. She was basically having these girls working in the royal palace with her, so she would like an explanation as to why Faust has ended up attacking them. We are then given an introduction to the Duchess and learn that even though she is the advisor to the first princess, she is still of high ranking and is considered to be the third person in line to the throne. This is due to the fact that she comes from an extended royal family, and she also has a great deal of trust invested into her by the commoners as well as the nobles of the court. Now the girls come cowering to Astarte and tell her that they were not even doing anything, so Faust attacked them without any rhyme or reason. Of course, Astarte is not going to listen to their words so easily, which is why she asks our hero for his side of the story as well. The girls once again call Faust a barbarian and tell him to get out of here. But he stands his ground and says that they were insulting his mother and stating that he was picked up as an abandoned kid. Astarte does not like what she hears, so she asks the others if what Faust said just now was true. They panic and try to defend their actions, but this is enough for the Duchess to know that our hero did not do anything wrong over here. The girls say that they only did this because of Faust being the advisor of Valerie, and it was only to win Astarte's favor. The Duchess does not like this kind of behavior though, so she kicks them away with rage and does not resent her actions. Faust then tells us that Astarte is also known as the goddess of war and the lady of massacre, who does not care if she is up against a man or a woman. Her exploits on the battlefield are a massive source of inspiration for bards all over the country. Faust recognizes her abilities because they had fought together in the war against Willendorf, but he also remembers her fondly because of her curvy body and pretty face. Now Astarte bows down to our hero and says sorry for what her subordinates were saying. She wishes for him to take her punishment to them as an apology from her end. But he has no issues with it at all. He even states that Astarte should not take things so seriously as her status outranks his by a massive margin. Of course, she is not the type who cares about such things, and she looks at Faust as her war buddy. She even goes on to say that when it comes to the spirit of battle, these bonds will always outlast status or any other kind of political philosophy. So even if there is a problem between Anastasia and Valerie, we can rest assured that Faust and Astarte will always remain friends. Then again, there's also the point that Valerie's faction is so weak that there isn't much to worry about when it comes to fighting the first princess. Either way, our hero likes Astarte because she has a warrior's spirit and also an easy personality, which makes her a good friend to him. However, there are a few things that he does not appreciate about her, and we see it in front of our eyes when she takes a look at Faust's bottom and finds it to be very attractive today. She goes ahead and gives him a good spank, which makes Faust wonder how such a good fighter has such a shady persona. She also asks him if he has gotten any thicker since the last time they saw each other, which is a rather odd thing to say. Our hero does not want to make a scene out of this, so he tells Astarte that she should not be doing such things in the public eye. The Duchess then admits that she has been reflecting on her past actions as a lady. She promises Faust that she will not do shady things to him when they are around in public, or if someone else is watching them. Of course, what she is saying would amount to harassment as per our hero's understanding, but this world works in mysterious ways. After all, it should not matter how many people are around them, as Astarte should not be spanking Faust's behind if he does not like it. Faust then adds that he is a man, so his bottom should not be as soft and curvy as a woman's bottom. However, Astarte states that she is a butt girl, which means that she loves butts. Thus, she is qualified to say that Faust's bottom is of the perfect shape and softness. She then flirts with our hero and says that since they have already shared blood and sweat on the battlefield, then they should share more with each other. She asks why Faust has not let her have her way with him, so he says that he is saving himself for his future wife. However, his nose is bleeding, which means that he is having intrusive thoughts about Astarte just as much as she is having them for him. The solution to this seems to be quite simple for the Duchess, as she says that she will marry Faust to make things simpler for everyone. This confuses our hero because he is not too sure about his land getting absorbed into Astarte's through their kid. She jokes around with him again by saying he should just let her have his kid, and she will make the kid the heir to his land. Of course, this would mean that Faust and Astarte would become more than lovers, but it is not a bad deal at all. Our hero thinks about it, and he states that he would most definitely not want to get married into Astarte's family, as they will simply absorb his land and claim it as their own. However, if he were to only have a child with her, then he would still be able to rule over his land and make the kid his heir. The only thing to worry about here is that he will come under scrutiny for having a kid outside of marriage. Now Astarte tells Faust that she has more knowledge and stamina than any other girl out there, even though she has never been with a man. This is fair enough to Faust because he is in the same boat as her. Since it is not such a big deal, he says that they are a match, and this makes Astarte very happy. Now the Duchess hugs our hero and says that she really wants him to be her first. As a matter of fact, she is even willing to pay for it, although our hero wouldn't mind doing the same thing for her. The intrusive thoughts take over Faust's head, and he thinks about how he actually does fancy Astarte as a potential mate. He has always been the kind of man to enjoy Twin Peaks, so he is not sure how he was able to control himself earlier. Things are about to get hot and heavy, and Faust even prays to his mom, telling her that when his child will be born, he will bring them to her grave to pay respects. However, before anything can happen between them, a demonic hand comes in between and stops the potential lovers from acting on their intrusive thoughts. It's none other than the first princess, Anastasia, who is upset with what her advisor is doing. She was also a part of the Great War against barbarians of Willendorf, as it was her first ever battle. Faust may have been the one who ended up beating all the top commanders, but it was Anastasia who received all the credit for defeating 1,000 women with only 500 of her own. The first princess angrily asks Astarte what she was talking to Faust about, but she calmly tells her that it only had to do with him becoming her shady lover. Anastasia gets angry and says this is nonsense, so she will not allow such a thing to happen. However, Astarte tells her that this is a private matter between her and our hero, so she should not get in the middle of it. On top of that, she mentions that Faust was not exactly against the idea himself, and this makes the first princess even more upset. Once again, she angrily says that such a union will never be possible because the royal family simply won't allow it. After all, Faust is from an entirely different faction as compared to Astarte. The Duchess seems to have a response for this as well, as she says that such things are only for show and do not hold any real meaning. As a matter of fact, she feels that Valerie's faction may as well not exist. Anastasia can't believe that Astarte would say something like this in front of her sister's own advisor, and she states that the Duchess is not worthy enough to be with our hero. She then orders Faust to turn down Astarte's deal, and he has to agree with the first princess. He looks away from Anastasia while doing so, and this offends the first princess as she thinks he is being rude. Then she asks him if he has given any thought to what she had spoken to him about earlier. Basically, we learn that Anastasia had asked Faust to leave Valerie and come work for her, because even she seems to be having some intrusive thoughts about him. However, Faust is very clear in his intentions, and he openly says no to the first princess without any doubts at all. She is shocked to hear this. So she reminds our hero of what Astarte said not too long ago about Valerie's faction, not amounting to anything at all. There is no way she is going to overthrow her elder sister. But Faust agrees to this, and says that he is sure of Anastasia becoming the next queen of the kingdom. However, even so, he wishes to remain as Valerie's advisor. Anastasia does not get why Faust is so keen on doing things for Valerie, so she asks him what's so special about her sister. Our hero simply says that he has a heart of his own, which is why he prefers to be with the girl he chooses. The first princess is amazed to hear this, and she states that Faust is indeed a free man. As a matter of fact, he is exactly like the way her father used to be. She recalls how her father never used to treat her as a princess, but rather as his own daughter. Anastasia also tells us that the way Faust likes to support the people of his land and lead his troops as a commander is very similar to the way her father used to live as well. It's almost as if they share the same ideals and the same heart. She also remembers how on the battlefield, Faust had told her that he found her to be a bit scary. Sharing something as intimate as that with a troubled smile on his face was one of the many reasons why our hero became so appealing to the first princess. To her, he is great, strong, and warm, just like a big sun. Now, this is all happening inside her head, so Faust still has not received a response to what he had said earlier. He wonders if his answer was not good enough to satisfy Anastasia, but she says that it was the perfect way to turn her down. The first princess finally reveals to us that Faust is indeed her very first love. With that, Anastasia decides to leave him alone, and says that he can continue being Valerie's assistant for now. Astarte also takes her leave and tells our hero to share his experience from his battle against the bandits once he's back. Later, we see both the girls fighting over Faust, with Astarte telling Anastasia that she should just give up on the Wrath Knight and let her have him as they had already agreed to get freaky with each other. However, the first princess says that once she becomes queen, she will simply force Faust to become her husband. The Duchess tells her that she will never be able to get our hero that way because of the laws of the land. Basically, if Faust was to become Anastasia's husband, then the place that he holds close to his heart will simply get absorbed by the royal family. If the first princess ends up taking Faust's land away from him, then there will not be any place for her in his heart. This makes Anastasia upset, so she asks Astarte if she wants her to give up. This is not something that she is ready to do because she has fallen in love with our hero. Astarte says that since Faust is a man who is dedicated to his ancestors, which means that he will do anything to protect their land. This is when the Duchess comes up with the idea to share Faust between the two of them. The only thing they need to ensure is that one of the children born between them will be made the heir of the Polydoro land. Of course, this comes across as a bit of a shock to Anastasia, because she has never heard of two women sharing the same man. She asks Astarte if she has lost her mind, but the Duchess counters by asking the first princess if she has lost hers. She knows that Anastasia only wants to take the innocence of our hero away, but the first princess refuses this. She states that she does not wish to sully our hero, but Astarte seems to know her all too well. She even says that Anastasia has a fantasy to push him down and have her way with him, even if he objects to it. It's either that or Anastasia wishes to see him with another woman in some kind of twisted desire. All these intrusive thoughts put the first princess in a spot of bother, as she does not wish to bother Faust right before Valerie's first campaign. Eventually, Anastasia does give in to her shady desires and tells Astarte that she is fine with sharing Faust. The Duchess is glad to hear this, but she says that they must wait for Valerie to get done with her battle first. Once that is done with, the girls plan some of the most unspeakable acts of all time with our hero, and it goes on to show that even though Astarte considers Faust to be her friend, she still wants to use him for his body. Now, we shift to the more innocent Valerie, who is busy with her documents along with Faust. Suddenly, she has an annoyed look on her face and remembers something that she needs to do. She wants to have this meeting with Faust later, and that's when we learn that a request for 15 people has been made to pay for their entry into a shady place. Then we see a businesswoman entering the royal mansion, and she is shocked to see how big it is. However, she knows that she is here for business, so she needs to stick to her plan and not get intimidated by the wealth in front of her. We learn that her name is Ingrid as she enters the building and is greeted by the butler girl who tells her that Faust is waiting inside for her. Ingrid is simply shocked to see that a man has been given a whole mansion to his name by the queen. However, this should not come as a surprise because Faust is like a celebrity in this world and even has the bards singing songs about him. We learn that Ingrid is actually the exclusive purveyor to Faust, who is an up-and-coming big-shot aristocrat. Basically, her merchant guild has been working with Faust's mother and his family for generations. This is all it took for her to jure an audience with him. Faust greets Ingrid and is glad to see that she has not changed one bit. Ingrid wants to be nice to Faust because her guild is barely in the middle lane when compared to her competitors. If she can stay on our hero's nice list, then the sky is the limit for Ingrid and her trading company. She states that she has fulfilled all of our hero's requests along the way. Whether it was enhancing his magic sword or mending a chain mail that could fit his massive body, she has done it all. Now Faust tells her that he feels bad for calling her to the mansion to have this discussion, but he maintains that what he is going to tell her simply can't leave this room. Of course, Ingrid is keen to make it happen, no matter what he may ask of her, because she wants to be his connect when he becomes a proper high-ranking member of the royal castle. Of course, it's not something too grand, as our hero simply whispers into Ingrid's ear that whenever his elephant stands tall, it grinds against his metal belt, and it causes him a world of hurt. Ingrid seems to have been dealing with this issue for a while, as she reveals that she was the one who made the metal belt for Faust in the first place. Since it was custom made to suit his size, the belt is not something that can be changed so easily. This is not good news for Faust, as he does not want his shady elephant to be exposed to the world. Ingrid wants to understand the root cause, so she asks Faust why his elephant gets so excited so often. The lady butler is a bit taken aback to hear this, but Faust tells the girls that men are just built this way, so it does not make sense to ask so many questions about it. It's actually a lot of trouble to talk to a girl about it, so Faust just wants to resolve this issue as quickly as he can. He asks Ingrid if it would be possible for him to get a new metal belt for himself, but this puts a frown on her face. Faust wants something bigger, but that may be a problem, as it would be more visible than the one he is wearing now. He'll definitely get found out if he were to dress as a noble. Now, Faust wonders that if he were like one of the pretty boys who would get jumped at any given point in time, he could explain that this belt was for his own protection. However, the problem is that he does not have a wife of his own, so it's not like he can ask for his own fidelity to be kept pure. Ingrid asks him about the Duchess Astarte, as she has heard that she has been pursuing Faust with a lot of passion. He counters that it is just her idea of a joke, and even if she were to be serious about it, they could never get together. Ingrid is a bit confused by this, so she asks for more clarity. Our hero explains that sooner or later, Astarte will have to get married to someone who is closer to her position as a duchess. He can't get past thinking that about her, so the whole thing does not make any sense to him. This is why he is looking for a wife of his own now, but the problem is that he is not too popular with the ladies. Ingrid tells us that Faust seems to have it all wrong when it comes to his deductions. First of all, there's the fact that he saved the whole kingdom from a massive invasion, so nobody can even doubt his abilities. Also, he comes from a lineage of knights who have had impressive records serving the country. So, he is definitely not as unpopular as he thinks of himself. As a matter of fact, Ingrid is positive that some parties must be doing their best to ensure his romantic life is being sabotaged. Another thing is that Ingrid's merchant senses are telling her that Astarte is a lot more serious about Faust than he realizes. After all, if the Duchess could get her hands on a man as strong as Faust, then she would be more than happy to never take a legal husband for the rest of her life. What is really troubling Ingrid, though, is this mansion itself. There was no way the second Princess Valerie was able to arrange such a grand place for Faust, so it could only mean one of two things. Either Valerie was able to convince the queen to gift this place to her advisor, or the queen decided to do it herself as a personal gift. Ingrid wonders if the girls are really that protective of Faust, or it could also be that they simply want to keep him locked up like a pet bird. However, if it got out that Ingrid was the one to tell our hero about these things, then there is no telling what Anastasia and Lyson might do to her. On top of that, there's Astarte, who really is nothing less of a demon to Ingrid. After all, she has such deadly names thanks to her exploits of war, and the bards also sing a lot of songs that celebrate her lack of mercy. Even if she could tell Faust about Astarte and her true intentions, she would not take that risk, as it is most definitely not worth the effort to her. Since all of this is going on inside her head, Faust asks her if she is listening to what he is saying. She laments that she has a bad habit of getting lost in her thoughts quite often, and then she figures that she just needs to get on our hero's good side, without having to get greedy or reach for the stars. However, her advice to him is a bit sketchy, as she suggests not hiding his elephant when it stands up. Of course, Faust asks her if she has gone nuts, because this is simply unheard of. Even Ingrid worries about what she has just said, because it's rather silly if you think about it. At the end of the day, Faust admits that as long as he is not married, he will have no other choice but to use the metal belt to hide his elephant. He then asks a question to his female butler, who is revealed to be Helga from his teenage days. Basically, Faust wants to know how long he will have to wait till he gets married. Helga asks him about the chat he had with Valerie about introducing him to suitors. Helga proceeds to take a seat, and then our hero says that the second princess told him that it would be next to impossible to find him a wife. While he laments his own situation, we can see that Helga feels that the nobles of this mansion do not have an eye for men. She even suggests that Faust should just go back to his own land and find a wife for himself from there. After all, even she is getting fed up of all the nonsense over here at the capital. Our hero is pleased to see his butler speaking her mind out, and he comments on it as well. Helga brushes his words aside, and then asks her master to consider one of Valerie's guards as his wife. Since these female guards are all the second or third daughters of nobles, and even if these families do not have hereditary titles, it should still count for Faust. So, it would just make sense for him to pick up a cute-looking guard from Valerie's selection and get married to her. This makes sense to Faust, and he remembers that he actually has a strategy meeting with Valerie and her guards soon. However, he remembers something about Valerie's guards regarding their lack of loyalty to the royal throne as well as their own blood. They seem to only care about their own desires and can't really use their brains. These guards are only good for using force when it comes to silly matters. As a matter of fact, Valerie had told Faust that her guards were no better than monkeys without an ounce of common sense. Helga is shocked to hear this, because she had no idea that the guards would be so bad. Meanwhile, we go back to Valerie, who has invited a girl named Zabine to her room. It turns out that she was the one who had requested for the funds to pay for 15 people going to a brothel. She would like to know exactly why such a request was made in the first place. This is when we learn that Zabine is the captain of Valerie's royal guard. She is supposed to be a blue blood who has come from a line of nobles, but that does not describe her true self. She is known to be a dangerous person who holds on to a set of beliefs that most people would call sociopathic. This is because Zabine believes in the power of violence, and her desires are so twisted that they would make even the most disgusting people puke their guts out. She is a knight, but she has been given the nickname of Chief Chimpanzee. Now, Zabine decides to give a reason for going to the brothel, and it happens to be because she had a chat with all 15 of her guards. That's when she learned that all of them were innocent, which was why they needed to get that monkey off their shoulders. This is very confusing for Valerie, as this should not justify the absurd request that is being made to her. With such women around him, how is Faust going to help Valerie in her battle? Also, will Anastasia and Astarte succeed in making him their personal slave? Like, share, and subscribe to find out in the next video. Hit the bell icon to get notified when I upload part 2. See you soon. Now that Zabine has made her intentions clear, it's safe to say that Valerie does not like what she is hearing at all. She tells the princess that her first ever battle will be beginning soon, and none of her fighters want to regret losing their lives without participating in shady activities. Once again, she asks if Valerie can grant them the funds from her annual budget. But she immediately says no to the idea without even giving it a second thought. Zabine is not at all happy to hear this, so she asks Valerie why she would do such a thing. The princess simply tells her that these funds are not from her personal piggy bank. After all, she has to make a detailed request whenever she needs money from the royal treasury. Having said this, it would be a ridiculous idea to ask the treasury for payment of shady activities. Zabine is not ready for the rejection, so she says that such things should not be an issue for Valerie due to her royal status. She does not know how she is going to explain this to the other girls, and then she almost becomes emotional. Zabine goes on a philosophical trip, wherein she asks what is the point of being born. The prospects of acting on her intrusive thoughts are way too amazing to let go of. And the worst part is that neither her nor her team will ever know what it is to have a child and become a mother. Valerie does not know how to deal with such a statement, and it makes her blush because she too has never been touched by a man. She reveals this to Zabine, and it changes the equation almost instantly. The princess tries to use this as motivation for all the girls to survive the battle, but Zabine turns it around by saying even Valerie should join them in acting out their questionable thoughts. Of course, the princess says no to this suggestion, because it's a bit too ridiculous to even consider. Valerie becomes a bit too handsy with Zabine and tells her that she should spend her own money if such acts mean so much to her. Zabine says that she and her army girls are the lowest amongst the lowest of the nobility. Even though she is a captain, Zabine still does not have any money to use for such things. Valerie knows that money is an issue for the army girls under her, but she says that they should focus on their jobs as knights. Also, if there are 15 knight girls, then it should not be so hard for them to land one commoner man. Zabine counters that even though she and her girls are poor, it does not mean that they will stoop down to the level of a commoner. They do have blue blood in them, so it is a matter of pride. Valerie does not understand this logic because a commoner is something disgusting for Zabine, but she is still fine with a professional man. She says that being a professional means doing a job, so such things do not count to her. Such logic defies Valerie's understanding, and she lashes out at Zabine for suddenly wanting to draw a line between a commoner and a professional. All this stress makes the princess girl emotional, so she breaks down into tears and tells Zabine that she and her knights should just be ended during the battle. This is a rather shocking thing to say, but Zabine's logic is what's even more frightening. It's hard to believe that someone with such little sense is able to hold the position of a knight girl. Valerie states that Faust's squire captain is a lot more talented than Zabine because it's been almost 4 years since her mother handed over these goons to her, and they still drive her mad. She thinks about the level of guards and knights that her elder sister Anastasia has gotten, and they are all of the highest caliber. Sure, they do get caught trying to occasionally peek at the slave boys, but this does not mean that they are idiots like Zabine. This once again leads the princess to wonder if she is just a useless child whose royal guard position is only useful as a dumping ground for fools. After all, her mother clearly seems to have a favorite child in Anastasia, even though the queen told us earlier that this is not the case. Valerie worries that if she ends up messing her first battle, then even Faust will be taken away from her. And that is the worst possible nightmare for her. She calls Zabine and her girls chimps, and it makes the captain scared because she fears that the princess will simply throw them away. She begs Valerie not to do such a thing because she and her knights have already been thrown out of their houses and have nowhere else to go. This makes Valerie stop and think for a bit because she can relate to this. After all, her own mom had also cast her aside, so she is not too different from these girls. This is why she can't get rid of them over a temper tantrum. Valerie now calms down Zabine and tells her that she will not fire her or any of the night girls. However, it is also important to note that they are simply going up against some bandits, so there is no need to worry about fatalities. Zabine reminds the princess that even if such is the case, they can't rule out injuries to the squad. This gives Valerie the cue to tell Zabine a rather epic tale. It is the tale of a male knight and his epic duel during the Great War against Willendorf. It is the tale of our hero, Faust von Polydoro, who rules his own land with courage and pride. She then goes on to talk about how Faust raised his sword and rode straight into the battlefield with no sense of fear or doubt. Of course, she paints a rather dramatic picture, because even Faust would probably not have said something so detailed about himself. Valerie continues to talk about how the mere weight of Faust's sword would be enough to make any woman groan. And then she explains his method of battle during the Great War. Even though he only had 20 women for support, there was a barrage of arrows that swayed down on him. But none of this made any difference to our hero, as he took on the enemy commander reckoned Bell all by himself. Bell is known to be the strongest knight of Willendorf, so Faust was truly up against the best of the lot. After they announced their names to each other, the duel began and both parties gave it their all. After the explanation is done, Valerie tells Zabine that she does not have to worry about a thing because they have the strongest knight in the country on their side. The princess girl also adds an insult by telling Zabine that she should focus on her sword skills, if she is so worried about getting injured. The captain now realizes that they do have an overpowered fighter with them, but it also gives her another shady suggestion. She proceeds to ask Valerie if they can have Faust pluck all their flowers rather than going to a professional place. As a matter of fact, they are going to be having a strategy meeting soon with Faust, so the timing could not be better. Of course, Valerie thinks that this is some kind of joke, because she can never imagine sharing Faust with anyone else. Zabine goes on to say some lewd things about Faust elephant, because she can assume this by looking at the size of his body. Valerie starts to panic, and she asks Zabine to tell her that she's joking. However, the captain says that the princess should join her and the other night girls in their fun session with Faust. After all, he does look like he can handle multiple women at the same time. Things continue to get shady, but Valerie is not having any of it, so she simply knocks out Zabine and then tells Faust that the captain will not be joining the meeting today due to some injury. Our hero is a bit concerned to hear this, so he asks Valerie if Zabine will be fine in time for the battle. She says that it's nothing to worry about and Zabine will definitely be a part of this mission. The funny thing is that we can see the captain is lying down on the floor and under the couch where Faust is sitting. Our hero tells Valerie that it's a shame he couldn't get to meet Zabine, as he was really looking forward to seeing her today. The princess is nervous and is barely able to keep a straight face as she tells him that she will make sure to get Zabine in line before they meet. After the meeting is done, we see Zabine and her guards entering what can be assumed as a bar. The guard greets her nervously and thanks the knights for their service to the country. Zabine says that she and her girls are here to lift their spirits, so she would like to find a spot to sit. The guard directs her to a corner where they won't be able to make much of a fuss. Zabine sits down with her girls and says that they need to have a good session before their first battle. She does not want to hold back because it could be her last drink together with these knights. This is a lot of big talk, and the girls come to their senses when they see that they don't have much money on them. After pooling everything together, they manage to order for a single keg, and then Zabine gives everyone the bad news. She reveals how her meeting with Valerie had gone, and it does not look like any of the girls will be getting lucky with a professional. The others do not take too kindly to this news, and they question the brains of those working in the royal palace's finance division. At the same time, such news should not be coming as a shocker to them because of the nature of the request. A tomboy knight girl makes fun of Zabine and the others for even believing that the princess was going to approve a professional visit with her funds. The captain is ashamed of the way things have gone, but then the other knight girls hit back at the tomboy for trying to act high and mighty in front of them. After all, even she is an untouched girl, so she should not have the right to say anything to her colleagues. The tomboy's name is revealed to be Hannah, and she says that all of the girls are supposed to be in the same boat. However, the others tell her not to act cool because even she was looking forward to the professional visit. She is just putting on an act right now in order to look appealing to the boys. They even go on to mock Hannah rather savagely, and it makes her cry. Zabine tells her knights to go easy on Hannah because it's not her fault that all the royal guards here have been untouched. They all happen to be around the age of 18, so they consider themselves to be slow when it comes to getting boys. Having said that, Zabine says that she has come up with an even better idea for her and the girls. It is none other than using our hero Faust. Hannah wants to know more about Faust, but Zabine tells her she should already know the fact that he is the world's strongest knight and also the most sacred man. The captain goes on to sing countless praises about our hero, but one of the girls says that Faust is over 6.5 feet of pure muscle. This would normally be attractive in the real world, but over here, the logic is completely twisted and women don't seem to like muscular men. The others also agree with her because Faust does not happen to be their type. They like soft, girly men with delicate hands, even though they don't even know what a boy's hands feel like. That's when another brawny knight says that these girls have no idea what they're missing out on. She favors the bottom side of men, so to her, Faust is a catch. Then another night girl says that Faust would be perfect for her because he has an elephant, which is all that matters to her. Hannah does not relate to these women, so she asks them how they have such tastes. However, Zabine states that whoever marries Faust will be able to raise herself out of poverty. That's when she puts down her drink and tells the other girls that they are the lowest possible ranks amongst the knights. This means they have titles which can't be passed down to the next generation. Such women would never be considered as wives for the son of a noble. However, if these knight girls are able to stand out in their first battle and prove their worth, then they could impress Faust. Having said that, only one out of these 15 girls can become our hero's wife. So this has turned them all into competitors. Zabine even states that all the knight girls should consider each other as mortal enemies. But Hannah asks her why she is trying to start a fight. It doesn't seem to matter to the others because they playfully fight each other to vie for Faust. It can be assumed that this is happening due to the influence of their drinks. So Hannah asks them all to calm down before someone gets hurt. By now, Zabine has lost her mind, so she gets on top of the table and declares there is one more way to get the job done. She suggests going to our hero right now and begging him to act out their wildest fantasies. This way, he will be able to take care of all the girls in one swoop. But the logic is bad enough to have Valerie order a hit on Zabine. What's worse is that she has a wardrobe malfunction, and Hannah worries that they are going to get blacklisted from yet another pub. Either way, the captain's words have reached out to her subordinates, and they all seem to have Faust on their minds now. They end up manifesting making our hero their husband, but Hannah simply calls them all a bunch of fools. Now, we move to the royal palace where Princess Valerie has made herself ready for battle. She reveals that she was only able to identify Anastasia's hatred towards her after their father passed away. She feels that her sister's hate is similar to how Astarte can't stand how mediocre she is as a person. She knocks on a door and enters a room, which happens to be that of Anastasia. She wants to ask her sister why she has been summoned here, but she is too scared to do so. Valerie then wonders if it has something to do with Faust, or if Zabine and her crew did something stupid again. Now, Anastasia takes a look at Valerie's armor and figures that she is heading off to her first ever battle. In that case, she has caught her sister right on time. But this only makes the princess worry that she will be locked up somewhere for Anastasia to win the bet for Faust. Valerie even considers the possibility of her own sister taking her life. But as it turns out, Anastasia simply wants to give her some advice for her first time on the battlefield. She begins by saying there is no such thing as certainty when it comes to a fight. Of course, Valerie is a bit taken aback because she did not expect her sister to be treating her so nicely. Then, Anastasia says that whatever information Valerie may take with her into battle can very easily be turned on its head within a few hours. She even gives an example by stating Valerie may think her rear is safe, but the enemy troops could suddenly launch their strongest troops right from that direction. In the heat of battle, a fighter can rarely be sure of making the right or wrong decision. These words may seem to be genuine, but Valerie heard something completely different from Faust when he told her about his first battle. As a matter of fact, when Valerie had asked our hero about his experience, he said that he was really nervous and believed he was going to lose his life that day. A flashback shows Faust talking about how he figured out that the chief of the village he was staying at was also in cahoots with the bandits. After that, our hero had slain around 20 out of 30 bandits all by himself, which pretty much sounds like a heroic epic. However, unlike Valerie, Anastasia did come back from the war alive, so it puts her in a different league. The elder sister now says that it's very important for Valerie to accept that she might lose people that are close to her in the middle of war. She gives her own example, as she had lost a lot of useful subordinates during her first battle. But she is not sure if her younger sister will be able to deal with the loss of those who are close to her. Anastasia repeats that in such situations, Valerie should not focus on worrying about the people she's lost, but rather on the next move she needs to make to counter the enemy. At this point, The princess realizes that her sister's advice is probably more valuable to her than even gold. Now, Anastasia says that she has done more than enough to prepare her little sister mentally for her battle. Valerie is a bit surprised that this was all she had to say, but Anastasia reminds her that she needs to head out soon to make sure she carries out her battle plan. Now, the princess heads out of the room and thinks about how scary Anastasia was looking today. However, what's done is done, and she has been given some great perspective on how to carry out her battle plan. She heads out of the mansion and meets with Zabine, her night girls, and our hero Faust. He greets her and asks if she is ready for battle, to which the princess puts on her battle face and says yes. With that, the squad heads out, and they cross the city side on their way to the bandits. Valerie becomes a tad too impatient from this and comments that they are going too slow. She is also annoyed to see the common folk in the middle of their boring lives. As they reach the riverside, Valerie calls out Zabine for moving like a sloth. She asks her where her energy has gone today, but the captain only says that the armor is too heavy for her and the girls. Valerie is suspicious, so she wonders if Zabine and the night girls went out drinking last night. The captain states that they are wearing too much chain mail, but the princess counters that Faust and his troops are wearing the exact same thing without any issues. Zabine becomes dramatic and says that if you drain a chimp of all their energy, then there will be nothing left for them to do. Valerie is not having any of this nonsense, so she scolds Zabine and tells her that she has brought this upon herself. It does not take too long for the captain to puke her guts out, so Faust decides to go easy on her. He tells the princess that this could be because it's their first ever battle. After all, such a feeling only becomes familiar after you have gotten used to a few campaigns. Valerie decides to take a break after listening to Faust, but Zabine says that they are not facing too many bandits, so there is no need for rest. However, Faust states that even though this is not a great look for them, it is still important to be prepared for anything that could happen on the battlefield. He adds that they should make sure everyone is in good battle condition, because they would not want to mess up anything at all. As expected, Valerie is a bit surprised to hear this from Faust because she had heard the exact same thing from her earlier chat with Anastasia. On top of that, these words stand out to the princess because she did not expect our hero to be so calm and composed to the point where he could take over from her. Anyway, he suggests taking some rest, so Valerie agrees with him. As the team takes a breather, Valerie sits down and thinks about the situation. Normally, it would be easy to take down such a small group of bandits, but at the same time, she will lose Faust if she fails to get the job done. Plus, her royal guard will get disbanded, so Zabine and the others will not have anywhere to go to. She once again comes back to the fact that she is looked at as a spare woman, so no one really has any kind of expectation from her. Even the commoners may not be placing too much of their faith into Valerie, but she is fine with that because she only wants to survive this battle with all her girls intact. She notices that Zabine is having a fun time with her troops, so she lashes out at them for being so useless. After all, there is the possibility of the bandits ambushing them while they're playing the fool. At this very moment, Valerie hears something from behind the bushes, so she gets ready for battle. Of course, it's just Hannah who had gone to answer nature's call. Zabine and her knights comment that Valerie screams a lot when she is scared. But this should be acceptable because she has never really left the capital before. This prompts the princess to consider controlling her own fear, so that she does not make a fool of herself in front of her subordinates. Now, we see the squad resuming its march towards the bandits, but there seems to be something else that's the topic of discussion. The girls are talking about the boys of Willendorf and their elephants. Apparently, the word is that they feel a lot better than the ones in the local capital because they look good and taste even better. This is not good news for Faust because it's only making his intrusive thoughts go out of control. Even Valerie does not appreciate such talk because the focus is most definitely not on the battlefield. As expected, the leader of the pack is Zabine, who is singing a song about the elephants of Willendorf. Faust does not want to seem shady, so he tells his attendant that it's impressive to see the knights so lively and energetic considering how they were only a few days ago. She responds by saying it looks more like some kind of shared neurosis. Zabine now starts talking about these elephants are able to bend their trunks, and this pushes Valerie to tell her to stop with this lewd song. The captain argues that singing songs is a right that has been granted to all the common soldiers right from the ancient time. However, the princess counters that Zabine and her girls are knights, not common soldiers. Her main concern is that such songs should not be sung in front of Faust, because he too has an elephant. That's when Faust's assistant Helga tells the knight girls not to get too comfortable in front of him. After all, his soldiers are known to beat up anyone who tries to harass him. This makes the knight girls panic, so they decide to quieten down. It's a bit too late though, so Valerie asks Faust if he is alright. Our hero says that the princess does not need to worry about him, because he is simply taken aback by the sheer deplorability of what Zabine is singing. Valerie says sorry once again, but the captain laughs out loud and states that she had forgotten they were marching with a gentleman. She asks Faust if he would like them to sing some kind of heroic ballad instead, but our hero does not care for any of these antics. He can smell something nearby, so he tells Helga that she needs to carry out exactly what he had spoken to her about earlier. She does as her master says and goes out to scan the area. She tells the other guards to stay alert, because this will be their first time facing crossbows. And then Valerie comments on the nature of this weapon. She remembers Faust telling her that even a commoner can end a night if they simply gain possession of such an item. Zabine and her girls are a bit concerned by how things are playing out, but Faust is focused, so he asks Helga if she can see anything. She uses her binoculars, but notices that the village up ahead has been completely ruined and ransacked. She can see some bodies as well, which means that things have gotten a bit more complicated than was imagined. The squad enters the village, and they are shocked to see the kind of damage that has been done to the people living here. There are way too many bodies to count, and the infrastructure has been ruined beyond repair. As crows and ravens feast on the flesh of the deceased, we see someone approaching the squad. It is an injured woman who arrives and passes out in Valerie's arms. Later, when she comes to her senses, she reveals that the village was attacked by more than 100 bandits. This is quite the shocker for Valerie, because nobody would have expected so many opponents. The woman adds that all her boys and money were ransacked and taken away after the women got ended. Of course, our hero is not going to just listen to this woman blindly, because she is the village's head woman. She should not be alive if she is the most important person here, because the enemy knows to take down the leader first. Faust does not trust this woman at all, because she may not have carried out her duty properly. So he asks her who she really is. What exactly is going on over here? Is this a trap that has been set by Anastasia? How is our hero going to help Valerie defeat over 100 bandits? Like, share, and subscribe to find out in the next video. Hit the bell icon to get notified when I upload part 3. See you soon. Faust is not going to let this suspicious woman off the hook, so he introduces himself as the key advisor to the second princess. He also wants to know from this survivor why she is alive and not among the corpses. This is when she reveals that it's rather shameful for her to admit it, but during the attack, she was shot in the arm with a crossbow bolt, and this led to her falling off her horse's saddle. Eventually, the village head woman passed out, and by the time she woke up, it was too late. Now, this makes the whole thing even more suspicious, because the reports had mentioned something completely different. Valerie is not convinced by what she hears, so even she wants a clearer picture as to what exactly went down over here. After all, the village had over 100 women, so it should have been able to hold its own for at least a few days. Now, the survivor head woman explains that at first, there were only 30 bandits that attacked the village, but then they got absorbed into a much larger force. It looks like things are taking a turn for the worst, and nobody seems to like what they're hearing. The survivor reveals more as she states that the attack only happened after there was a succession struggle within the family that rules the nearby town, which itself had over 1,000 residents. As expected, this battle turned into a feud, and that led to a battle taking place between their forces. This is when a massive shocker comes to Valerie and her forces. The person leading the battle was none other than the first daughter of the Bozal family, who eventually won, but wavered when she had to order for the ending of her rebel sister. These are all horrible implications for Valerie, and as she tries to figure out what is, the village further explains that the rebel sister is the second daughter of the Bozal family, who is actually a former knight named Caroline Bozal. After losing the battle, she took the chance to escape with her soldiers and all their armor as a matter of disgrace. Valerie does not like this at all because she will not be dealing with bandits, but rather with a knight. Of course, our hero Faust is not the type to be swayed by such information, so he asks the village head how she has so much information about such things. She answers that a messenger had arrived from the first daughter warning them about Caroline coming to attack them. The women of this village were asked to flee, but they failed to do so, thinking that it would not get so serious. Faust can only think of one thing here, and it is about the incompetence of Caroline as a leader. The village head states that the women of the village had sent someone out to the capital to convey this message, but Valerie and her team arrived right before the messenger left. This means that the message has reached the capital, and it must be in a state of total uproar now. The head woman continues by saying she and the other village folk decided to resist, which is why she decided to have all the men and boys take shelter in her residence. However, even after gathering all the villagers, these women never really stood a chance against the invading army. The head woman burst into tears and says sorry for not being able to keep her people safe. But Valerie hugs her and says she did as well as she could. She also apologizes for making the head woman relive these painful memories. Of course, everyone has been put into a tricky spot, so Valerie asks Faust what should be her next plan of action. He has only one idea in mind, which is to predict the enemy's next move. Our hero uses his big brain energy and states that Caroline would not stick around after attacking a village that pays taxes directly to the capital. Instead, it would make a lot more sense for her to run away to the border of Willendorf, which is not that far from here. She can easily seek refuge there, and even conspire with them to attack this land again. What worries Valerie is the fact that they will have to face an army of at least 100, and that too with most of them being skilled soldiers. She asks if she has the option of reinforcements, and learns that Duchess Astarte is currently at the royal capital. She has around 200 members of her personal standing army, and she is sure to come here after learning about the wretched news. The problem, though, is that she will most likely not be able to make it in time for the battle. After all, it takes at least 2 days to get here from the royal capital, no matter how fast you may be. Faust adds that Valerie only has 15 soldiers in addition to his own troops of 20. Adding himself and the princess means that they only have 37 people to fight against the 100 soldiers. It seems like an impossible task. But then Princess Valerie pleads with Faust to use some other word. She can't afford to lose her first battle, because she knows of the deal she had made with her mom regarding Faust. She is to give him up to Anastasia if she is to fail this task, and that is something she does not want to experience. All sorts of thoughts start to run through the second princess's mind, including some intrusive ones involving Faust and her sister. The main issue, though, is that Valerie can't really run away from this problem, because the attacked village is under the rule of her family. She must do something about it, and she even considers beating Caroline to the Willendorf border. She figures her team of 37 can at least stall the enemy forces until reinforcements arrive. Another problem is risking the lives of her knights, which is something Valerie has a problem with. However, Zabine tells her not to worry about such things because she and the others are prepared for the consequences. This might seem noble at first, but then Zabine reveals that her true intention is to make such a good impression that she and her squad will be treated as heroes when they come back to the royal capital. Plus, This will make them all super popular with all the boys. And this could lead to tons of shady activities resulting in gushing waterfalls. Valerie does not really enjoy hearing such talk. But then her inner mind asks her to announce herself as a true blue blood. She then asks Faust what he would do if he were in her position. He blatantly tells her that her first battle has ended in failure, and she should just give the order to abandon the pursuit of Caroline. It's a tough pill to swallow for the princess, but she knows that this is far as she can go. After all, she can't stand the idea of so many good soldiers giving up their lives for her sake. She tells Faust that she will do as he says, and she decides to abandon the pursuit. This may have been a selfless act, but it still leaves Valerie with a lot to do. She can't believe that she has failed such a simple mission, and she wonders what the others are going to say when they find out about it. With no other option in mind, Valerie figures that she might as well just go to the convent and live a fulfilling life over there. There, she will be able to devote her life to prayers and singing. She will also pray for the safety of Zabine and her guards, as well as for Faust finding a good bride. The princess is filled with thoughts of failure and getting taunted by the people of the capital because of this mission. However, as she makes an exit from the house, she sees herself cornered by all the people of the village who had hidden from the attackers. As a matter of fact, these folks are so energized that they could be mistaken for the bandits themselves. The villagers beg Valerie for help, and her guards are not able to keep them at bay, so they ask her what to do. These people believe that since Valerie has come with an army, she must be here to help them all. But that is not at all the case. They seem to be extremely grateful to have her in their presence, but there's nothing that the princess can do about it. All of these expectations bring her back to her own sister's achievements, and this makes her feel like even more of a failure. Valerie is extremely confused, but then Faust shows up to tell her that she can rely on him for safety. Our hero is the best man for the job, but then the village head tells her people to stop with the drama. The crowd now asks the head woman what she spoke about inside with Valerie and the others, but she is in no mood to have such a chat, so she tells them all that nothing can be done about their current situation. This is not a good look for anyone, but there is no other choice, so Faust leads the team away. On their way out, the girls tell the other knights about them retreating, but this is not at all what they had in mind. The other soldiers are shocked to learn about this, and then they turn to Zabine for some encouragement. They don't get any of that from her, as she tells them that they have failed in their mission. The knights know that they can't go back home like this, so Zabine says she is trying to think of a way out of this mess. This actually leads to a hilarious scene as the other knights tell Zabine that she is not really cut out for thinking. This is supposed to be Valerie's job, or better yet, Faust's. Now, some of the villagers arrive and bow down to the second princess to beg her for help. They wish she came a bit earlier because they have lost their loved ones and want her to get them back. These desperate cries for help become a bit too much for Valerie to handle, so she asks someone to make it all stop. That's when Zabine shows up and asks the second princess if she is all right. Valerie tries to reassure her that she's fine, but Zabine does not seem to understand the meaning of social context. She openly calls the begging women peasants, and she bashes them for getting too close to the second princess. This is a shocking sight to Valerie, but for some reason, the other knight girls seem to enjoy this kind of forceful presentation. Faust is also taking a note of this because he feels that what Zabine is doing is quite unique. Valerie does not share the same sentiment, so she calls her out for being rude and shameless. After all, a knight is supposed to protect the people, not hit them. Even so, Zabine continues to smack the villagers, and this leads to a rather hostile environment. The women can't believe that the princess would bring such a brutal woman to their village, and they demand her to leave immediately. However, Zabine looks back at them and dares them to utter another word. She is clearly ready to give them a thorough thrashing, and even though the villagers hurl insults at her, she remains unaffected. Zabine states that she has no respect for such people because they all hid while the attack was actually happening. If these women had actually tried to fight during this time, then they would not have lost those who are close to them. This is exactly why Zabine feels no remorse for these cowards, and she tells them that they are as good as corpses for what they have failed to do. Now, even the villagers don't know why Zabine is insulting them so excessively. But then she points out that the head of the village is covered in wounds and bandages. However, everyone else is perfectly fine without a single scratch on their bodies. An old man from the village reveals that the head village woman fought tooth and nail to make sure her son was kept safe from the attackers. Anyone who had tried to fight for their sons and husbands were hanged to set an example. However, this leads Zabine to ask why the current village folk have not been hanged. Normally, this would be an odd question, but it makes sense when you look at it from the perspective that these villagers fled when the going got tough. Zabine continues to lash out at everyone for being useless scum, while Valerie and Faust watch on in silence. Naturally, the second princess begs our hero Faust to stop Zabine before the matter gets worse. But he does not do anything because he seems to notice some promise in this young lady.
Our hero Faust has to act fast for Princess Valerie. Otherwise, Zabine is really going to mess things up for them. Of course, the brawny babe does not care what the others might be saying about her, and she tells them that they are all useless. After all, not only did they give chase to their attackers, they didn't even bury the heroes that fell for them. Zabine adds that when she and her team had arrived, a lot of these people were still hiding like cowards. The people argue that knights are supposed to be helping the villagers regardless, since it's their job to do so. Valerie can't take any of this anymore, so she begs Faust to make it stop. But then Zabine says that it does not matter if the villagers beg for help or not, because the princess arrived to save them anyway. However, the knights alone won't be enough to get the job done, which is why they need heroes from the villagers who could swell up their ranks. Zabine then points to a mother from the battlefield and talks about how she had no weapon, neither was she strong. However, she still took her pitchfork and went to fight the enemy, which is exactly the kind of attitude they need right now. However, these villagers ended up leaving that mother to her fate, which makes Zabine all the more annoyed. With people like this, nobody will be able to save anyone at all, so the survivors should just bury their heads in shame. Once again, they counter by saying the knights are supposed to save everyone, so Zabine says that they're all just sounding like a broken record player. The night girls continue to mock the survivors for being cowards, and then they hear someone say something, but state that they aren't able to hear it. Suddenly, one of the villagers says that she's alone, but she'll be going with the knights. Zabine likes the sound of this, so she says that she has finally found a hero here. After seeing this, the other villagers also end up joining the knights on their journey to get rid of Caroline. Zabine now applauds the villagers, stating that she is glad to see so many heroes standing up for the cause. She then tells them to step forward and take up arms, because the time to lay down their lives has arrived. With that, she motivates everyone to go and tear down Carolina for vengeance. Now, Princess Valerie has a whole militia of folks ready to fight for her, and then Zabine asks Faust if he would like to reconsider his position on retreating for now. Our hero admits that Zabine may be an arrogant fool, but she is surely a woman to be reckoned with. She has managed to turn all these villagers into soldiers, which is great because the guards who serve under the second princess don't seem to know anything about a knight's honor. He asks Zabine if she too is unaware of this honor, which is what may have led her to act this way. She argues that these people were all as good as dead if they left them the way they were. She adds that she would have given up already as per their current circumstances. But she knows that things will be different with Faust around, as he is most definitely their deciding factor. Our hero acts humble by saying Zabine is overestimating him, as he is not like Lady Astarte, who can turn the tide of the battle all by herself. Zabine counters by saying Faust is selling himself short here. They have more than enough troops now, but Faust laments that he has to repeat himself once again. Even with these many people added to their squad, there are still tons of problems to deal with. First of all, if they want to catch Caroline before she crosses into Willendorf, then they would need to make it to the border within 3 days. Even if they would be able to make it, Faust doubts that these 40 members of the new militia will be able to keep up the pace. Of course, there's also the fact that Caroline and her company will resist them, which means that even with their new numbers, a lot of people may not make it out alive. Valerie agrees with Faust, but then Zabine and her night girls hold her face and toy with her as if it's no big deal. They say that all they have to focus on is to keep Princess Valerie safe and they'll be fine. After all, this is their one and only shot at the big league, so they'll feel amazing when they win. They don't want to be jinxed right now, so they say they should move on to their second problem, which is that they don't really have enough commanders for their troops. Zabine wants to know who Faust has in mind to lead the extra 40 militia. She turns to the wounded survivor and asks if she is good enough to get the job done. The village head then begs Faust to allow her to join the troops because she can still swing her sword arm. This will be her main chance to wipe the stain off her name after what happened when Caroline first invaded them. She is definitely keen on getting rid of the demon girl, so Faust decides to allow her to join the troops. Zabine is thrilled to hear this, so she asks Faust if this is enough to clear all his problems for now. Princess Valerie states the other girls have just been going on and on about the battle plan against Caroline, but they should not be deciding things as per their own whims and fancies. This is not some fun game they are playing over here, so she is not going to see her night girls get hurt. At this very moment, the others ask Valerie if she means to abandon them now. Valerie is now in a tricky place, so she tries to console the villagers by saying she understands their pain. That tactic is not going to work on them because Zabine has just ignited a lot of fury within them. Valerie says that she will tell their story to the people at the royal capital. They will surely send someone to deal with the situation, but then Zabine tells her that these people are all ready to lay down their lives for her. This upsets her greatly, and she says that the night girls should just go back to being the monkeys they are known to be. She does not need anyone to become martyrs for her, and she also knows that deep down, everyone is scared of what might happen to them. It does not make sense for them to act so brave all of a sudden, so she says they should all just go back to the capital for now. Zabine says that she too wishes to go back to the capital, and it is quite obvious that she is scared of what may follow. She anyways loves being ridiculed by the princess, hanging out with her foolish friends, drinking at the same cheap diners every night, and waking up with familiar hangovers. These are the happiest days of her life, so she would not want to leave them behind. Zabine also admits that she only likes to joke around, and would typically run away from anything tough. However, even a fool like her can read the expression on her princess's face. If they run away now, would they still be under Valerie? Would she still be their master? Zabine explains that if this were the case, then she would definitely have everyone come back with Valerie and even abandon the villagers. However, she knows that if they abandon this mission, then they would most likely not serve under Valerie any longer. In essence, the knights of her royal guard want to stay by Valerie's side forever, which is why they want her orders to pursue Caroline. Having no place to return to is pretty much the same as being dead. So all the night girls bow down to Valerie and ask her to guide them. The princess is a bit shaken up, but it's high time our hero actually did something useful, so she wants to hear his final word on the matter. Faust activates Giga Chad mode and asks the night girls if they have anything else they would like to add. This is because he personally did not find this speech to be very motivating in general. This clearly makes everyone upset over the anticlimax. But then Faust states that he would like to request an extra reward from the royal coffers. On top of that, he'd like the princess to guarantee that he will get a huge chunk of that pie for himself. Zabine gets upset and tells Faust not to underestimate the budget given to Valerie. However, Faust counters by saying they are flat broke, so there's no point beating around the bush. He then tells Valerie that her own line of thinking isn't wrong. Retreating would not be a bad option, but before our hero can provide his feedback, the princess makes her decision. She is going to personally demand compensation for this incident from Helma van Bozel, who is the new ruler of the Bozel lands. On top of that, she will handsomely reward Faust with this money, just as he had suggested earlier. She will not accept a pittance either, and she will get everything out of Helma. This is a bit surprising to Faust, but he agrees with Valerie and commends her bold approach. He then puts a helmet of Valerie and tells her that she has just reminded him of how much he hates an incompetent leader. He is ready to get this job done so that he can squeeze every last penny out of Helma. His attitude is a bit too scary to Valerie, but the decision has been made, so even Zabine decides to recruit the people she believes will be able to deal with Caroline. Now, Helga goes to Faust and tries to catch his attention, but he tells her that Valerie has already given her command, so it's a bit too late to object to that. However, this is not what Helga wants to talk to him about. She wants to know what our hero thinks of a particular girl among the knights. Faust is amazed that Helga is trying to find a wife for him even after being in such a delicate situation. This is amazing from Helga, and she has also chosen someone who has a massive set of pillows. In a hilarious turn of events, we see that the woman in question is actually Zabine, who is telling all the new recruits to start learning the marching songs of this militia. Of course, Faust is shocked by Helga's suggestion, but she says she would definitely recommend Zabine to him. He asks Helga if this is some kind of joke and if she actually has another suggestion for him. She states that Zabine might be a savage, which leads to a lack of manners, but she is a noble at the end of the day. Faust argues that Zabine just told a whole bunch of common folk that they were better off dead, and she basically forced Valerie into making a rather risky decision. She cast aside her own noble obligations for purely selfish reasons, which is a huge red flag to our hero. He asks Helga how she would think of him if he demanded her and the rest of his people to lay down their lives for him. It would be no different from what Zabine is doing right now herself. Nonchalantly, Helga says that she and her folks would be more than happy to do this for him. Faust does not follow, but it gets even funnier when Helga states that these villagers were indeed far too gutless when Caroline came to attack them. She believes that Zabine was right in the way she spoke to the villagers, and Valerie is already 14 years old, so she can definitely make her own decisions. Faust now gets it, as Helga has grown to become quite fond of these knight girls. Plus, Helga has lived so close to war her whole life that Zabine's behavior only seems normal to her. Faust does not want to explain this to Helga, so instead, he says that he is not smart enough to explain it to her. Having said that, they are going to be seeing a lot more death around them now, and Helga is ready to take everything on once they reach the border, which is currently 3 days away. How is this battle going to turn out for Faust and Valerie? Is Caroline really going to be that tough of an opponent for them? Like, share, and subscribe if you like these videos put together for you. If you want more, then show some love and I'll make a fresh start with the remaining chapters. Okay then, I'll see you in the next one.